All right, good evening. We are now in November 11th, I believe. Uh, so the pandemic has been reaching its worst point yet, and we knew already. We saw it coming. We already knew that the winter was going to be um, the I guess one of the high points because as we know, the seasonal influenza hits hardest in the winter, and so it was obvious. It was very obvious. Nobody should be surprised at what's happening right now. So here on Warometers, we look at the latest numbers. If it decides to load. So daily cases have been skyrocketing, completely out of control. It's uncontainable. It's the worst. It's just beginning at this point. Deaths are spiking back up. Levels that have not been seen before, and that's only what's reported. So you can only imagine what's been not reported. In other words, according to the official numbers, we have 52 million cases, 1,289,000 deaths. Recovered is a meaningless number, doesn't mean anything. Now, this is what's reported, so you can only imagine what the real numbers could be, way beyond that. We will go over the numbers and then a lot of news. Today, there was a lot of news. I couldn't believe how much came out today compared to the recently. So, USA number one with new cases, 142,000. I think that's a new record. India, second, 48K. Brazil third, 47K. France fourth, 39K. In terms of deaths, USA is back at the top with almost 1,500 deaths. Italy second, 600. Mexico third, 600. UK fourth, practically 600. So more consistent deaths in the countries, fortunately. So let's go over today's news. U.S. reports more than 140,000 new SARS-2 cases, latest all-time high. Now, different organizations that do tallies get different numbers. So I guess one of them got 140K. SARS-2 infections across the greater Washington region surged past the 3,000 mark Wednesday. Today, for the first time, spreading with relative ease as caseload set another record high. And Washington got hit very early on. I think the first case was there, perhaps. And now they're going back up again. It's inevitable. Nobody escapes wave 2, or so it seems. So you can only imagine what India and Brazil's wave 2s are going to look like once those happen. SARS-2 cases continue to soar across much of Europe as several countries struggle to contain surges in hospitalizations and deaths. France and Italy have reported record daily case numbers in recent days. France is among several countries, including Germany and England, that have recently implemented new lockdown measures. Spain implemented a nationwide curfew last month. Now, Italy is hitting records. Italy is back to how they were in the first wave, and it's only rising and getting worse. The biotechnology company Moderna announced that its SARS-2 vaccine trial has reached a crucial threshold that will allow an independent committee to analyze whether it is effective. So when it comes to vaccines, you have to keep in mind, whatever this virus is, its backbone is a coronavirus. And there's a reason why we have why we have yearly shots against the flu. Because there is no vaccine to prevent us from getting the common flu. It just keeps hitting you. So, as I said, I don't know what they put in this virus, but the whole coronavirus part of it, I think, is just a backbone. The real juice of this virus is still unknown. It's something that's deep within it. Practically, I know some of it has to do with the spike protein, but just keep that in mind. There won't be a vaccine, and if there is, you can expect side effects, and we've talked about that for months now, many months. Surging cases prompt Sweden to implement new restrictions. So people have hailed as Sweden as the one country that contained the virus, and they are now feeling the sting of the lash as they go down towards new restrictions. The infection is spreading quickly, and just in the last week, the number of people with SARS-2 who are being treated in ICU have more than doubled in just the last week. That's gonna look very, very bad for the global community if Sweden falls like this, like it is, and it will. There are currently confirmed infections at 48 out of 313 nursing home facilities in the Stockholm region, with more than 20 of those locations reporting cases in the past week. It's accelerating in Sweden. New cases have also dropped significantly in Belgium, though the country is now only testing symptomatic people. You want to test all people, not symptomatic people. That's not how. This is a notoriously asymptomatic virus. Why would you test only symptomatic people? So that's not going to end well. But for the current times, they're trying to save face. So this is like a last ditch effort to appear to be doing well by reducing testing to just symptomatic people in a virus that blocks the pain receptor. Keep that in mind. The chief executive of Piziver made $5.6 million after cashing out a significant portion of his own stock holdings in the company on the same day the pharmaceutical giant unveiled promising results for its SARS-2 vaccine. Bolsonaro says Brazilians must not be sissies about coronavirus, as all of us are going to die one day. EU agrees to buy 200 million doses of Pfizer vaccine. I don't think I pronounced that one correctly. Pfizer, I don't know. I finally got my wish. Nebraska lawmaker who embraces herd immunity contracts SARS-2. He learned the hard way. A top U.S. official criticized the WHO's investigation into the source of the SARS-2 pandemic on Tuesday, saying there had not been enough transparency surrounding a planned mission to China. So the WHO went to China a while ago, actually, to figure out the origin. I mean, we've heard nothing about it. So it's pretty obvious that China has them just lollygagging, taking their time, and they're gonna come up with a report. If they do, that says completely just garbage. Adverse event: the halted Brazilian vaccine trial is being treated as suicide. So the vaccine that Jair Bolsonaro was hating in Brazil as the savior of his country is causing people to kill themselves. So you can, I mean, it's incredible. It's incredible how people just they don't analyze this and see that there's a very sinister thing going on behind vaccines. The rush for vaccines is ridiculous. U.S. as hopes fade for a second stimulus payment this year. Scammers target people still waiting for financial relief. If this country would have done the right thing, it would have gave people relief. So this just shows you the unwillingness of the American government to be moral and ethical in a country where 30 million lost their jobs in the beginning of the pandemic. They don't care about their own people. It's obvious, And today's Veterans Day, and yet the veterans of America are some of the most downtrodden, abused, left behind, most homeless, most poor people that are around. People that fought for a country that doesn't care about them. Can you believe that? Can you believe that? Cyprus has announced partial lockdowns in the towns of Limassol and Paphos to curb a surge in SARS-2 cases. Texas became the first U.S. state with more than 1 million SARS-2 cases. California is also closing in on that mark as a surge of SARS-2 infections engulfs the country from coast to coast. Despite having the highest number of confirmed SARS-2 cases on the continent, South Africa will open up travel to all countries to restore normal trading hours of alcohol in an effort to boost the tourism and hospitality sectors, the President Cyril Ramaphosa said. I think that Africa is the most severely underreported, area of all during this pandemic, because this virus seems to be very in favor of them. There's a lot of talk going around that it's an ethically targeting virus, because the Asian countries have been mostly, appear to be hit significantly less than the white countries and the black countries and the Latino countries. There's something going on there, and it's something that we've been, seeing for months. I know Dr. Kevin McClure did a study on what they did. I think it was in macaques. And they noticed that the virus was particularly fond of a certain kind of them, which hinted towards ethnic selectivity. And we found out afterwards that I think it was African and Indian people from Africa and India that they were getting hit the hardest by it. So, I mean, there's more factors into it. It's still being studied, but it's just some information that we have. Officials and doctors in Pakistan urged people to stay at home as the air quality in Lahore deteriorated to hazardous levels. The New York Governor Andrew Cuomo imposed a new round of restrictions. New York is heading towards their wave 2, so stay tuned for that disaster. Turkey banned smoking in crowded public places to slow a recent surge in symptomatic patients with SARS-2. At my job, a lot of people smoke outside the building, and I always got to smell that. It's obnoxious. Also, at my job, we had a new infection today. We've had many infections. It doesn't stop. But this one was in my department, and it was very sketchy what happened because they told some of us what happened, but they didn't tell all of us. I was among the group that was not told about it. I found out today because somebody told me. There's somebody that I worked with, sometimes in close contact, had the virus. The reason why the company did not tell all of us is because they're afraid of all of us going on the hey, you gotta if you with somebody that near that has the virus, you gotta go in quarantine or I guess self isolate. So the company was scared that all of us would self isolate, which would damage the profits, which is the main motive. So they only told some of us what happened, and I was left out. It's, if anything, I already have it. I'm already feeling kind of sick from the weekend, so I guess we'll see. Greek authorities announced stricter restrictions on movement, extending a curfew nationwide after infections broke fresh records. Spain will demand a negative SARS-2 test for all travelers arriving from countries with a high risk for SARS-2 from 23 November. Slovakia's government will extend its state of emergency powers for the rest of the year to battle a surge in SARS-2 cases. In New Jersey, one of the early hotspots, a surge in cases in Newark, the state's largest city, prompted the mayor Ras Baraka to implement aggressive measures, including a mandatory curfew for certain areas to contain the spread of the virus. So New Jersey got hit hard, and now they're getting hit hard again when they got hit hard so early. So where is the herd immunity? Where is the herd immunity? I'm not seeing this because why? Because it was a false dream. It doesn't exist. Trying to say that you can beat SARS-2 with herd immunity is like saying you can beat the common cold with herd immunity. It's a failure. It's never gonna happen. Mongolia has reported its first domestic transmissions of SARS-2 from a truck driver who infected his wife and the two other relatives after 3 weeks of quarantine. Officials in Japan have warned of an impending third wave of SARS-2 infections amid a rise in cases blamed on colder weather and a government campaign to encourage domestic tourism. Cases go up because cold weather. They go up because tourism. It's as wet as water. Hospitalizations in the U.S. are at their highest level since the pandemic began, and scientists and doctors expect the number to rise. In El Paso, Texas, a convention center has been turned into a SARS-2 field hospital, and refrigerated trailers have been trucked in to store the dead because there's no more room in the morgues. It's happening all over again. Texas, El Paso County Judge Samaniego extends the virus shutdown order until December 1st. He just announced this, I think, like 4 hours ago. So Texas is just doomed at this point. In Massachusetts, Michigan, and several other states, hospitals are struggling to find enough beds for the influx of SARS-2 patients and canceling elective surgeries so doctors and nurses can concentrate on SARS-2 cases. In North Dakota, Governor Doug Burgum has given healthcare workers who tested positive but aren't displaying any symptoms the green light to keep treating SARS-2 patients because he's running out of nurses and doctors. Let's let people who are infected by a virus that spreads asymptomatically keep on working close contact because they don't show symptoms. I mean, the jokes write themselves. The jokes write themselves. The trend obviously are going in the wrong direction and show no signs of changing, said Massachusetts Governor Charlie Baker, who warned they might have to once again open field hospitals to care for a possible overflow of patients as hospital ICUs fill up. Two more people who attended the White House election night party have tested positive. Brian Jack, the White House political director, and Trump ally Healy Baumgardner. More than 540 students at the University of Connecticut were placed in quarantine Wednesday after a dozen students have tested positive for SARS-2. All you hear is COVID, 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 Trump said shortly before the election at a campaign rally in Gastonia, North Carolina. That's all they put on because they want to scare the hell out of everyone. Now, Trump's a joke. Obviously everything he says is nonsensical and garbage. But when he says things like this, you know that he's just lying. That the opposite is what's actually happening. That the virus is taking over. People are scared, but they're never gonna admit that because if Trump admits that, then it's like a defeat, and he'll never admit defeat. Him and whoever's pulling his puppet strings. New research confirms that temperature and symptom checks miss many SARS-2 infections. A study published Wednesday found that these measures failed to detect infections in new Marine recruits before they started training, even after several weeks of quarantine. Many recruits had no symptoms, yet still spread the virus. Genetic testing revealed 6 separate clusters of cases among the recruits. Temperature check machines used in public places are never going to help. They're going to actually do more damage because the virus makes most people affected asymptomatically, and that's how the virus is spreading out of control. How is a temperature checker going to stop detecting the virus in you when you're not showing symptoms? It's obscene. It is very obscene. Anyways, prison and jails have become a public health threat during the pandemic, advocates say. Fresno's mayor-elect tests positive for SARS-2 after election night party. And then CBG report number 102. SARS-2 Doctor's Diary. We are first-hand witnesses of the devastation, part 1 of 5. The second SARS-2 wave has already put many hospitals under great pressure, and its nurses and physios who bear the brunt of it, writes Dr. John Wright of Bradford Royalty Infirmary, BRI. Here he introduces 4 nurses who describe the strain they are now under. See, the medical workers, we got to listen to the medical workers because they're on the front lines, but nobody wants to listen to them. So here's a couple of testimonies. Let's see, where are we? Oh, it continues. So work, sleep, repeat. Our doctors, nurses, physiotherapists, and support staff have settled into a weary routine. The hospital is nearly full. The patients we admit were infected a fortnight beforehand. The patients who are dying were infected 8 months ago, when the government scientific advisory group, SAGE, was recommending a circuit break. The virus has used this time to great effect. In Yorkshire, 1 in 37 people tested positive in the last week of October, almost 3% of the population. This is a prevalence figure beyond our comprehension. The avalanche has begun at the top of the mountain, and we are readying ourselves at the base for its unstoppable force. As with the first wave, it is our 2,000-strong nursing staff who will bear the biggest impact. Part 2. Moira Whiting, staff nurse, ward 31. It's getting very busy. It felt like it had reached capacity last night, and it looked like it's going to be worse. It's COVID on top of winter illnesses, the twindemic that I talked about. As a team, I've noticed that we are bracing ourselves, and we are all coming down with aches and pains. We've talked about backache when we get home. There's just tension, and we are all feeling it. The mood has changed. At the beginning, it was, come on, we can do this. But now it's like, have we got to do this again? At the beginning, we didn't know how brutal the impact of COVID would be, and the toll it would take, watching people you've got to know over a matter of days or weeks just deteriorate. We've seen the devastating impact on families, on a dad, a son, a wife, and we still talk about them as a team. We are always talking about them. We are first-hand witnesses of this devastation. Now I end up dwelling on things, thinking of families and nursing and what its impact is. I've got student nurses, and I'm signing off their booklets and thinking how brave and amazing these nurses are who are starting their careers in a pandemic. And the admiration I have for my colleagues. One had to hold the phone as she was looking after a dying man so that his wife could speak to him, and it was unbelievable that she could do that. She hadn't been able to have that conversation with her own husband because he died suddenly. She was so selfless. One morning, my daughter Hannah started wearing one of my scarves. She said that if I died, she had something to remember me by. Part 3. Karen Dauber, Chief Nurse, Bradford Royal Infirmary. We have staff who have moved out to live elsewhere in order to protect relatives at home. Oh, yeah, I remember that. We heard a lot about that early on because they had to. Staff who have canceled holidays, who aren't seeing their loved ones because they are dedicated to working here and they see the urgency. But that can't go on forever. We've seen people recently coming to work in their own time on days off. It's like a huge Sudoku puzzle stuffing the wards as we try opening new red wards. If we are opening extra wards, we have to move nurses from other areas, and it's a hard one as people still need operations. It's upsetting for everyone. If you are waiting for an orthopedic operation and you're in pain, you can't have that done because we need to redeploy staff. I am fearful. We are living in uncertain times. I am 99% of the time a very positive person, and hopefully we will get through this. The problem is that it's relentless. A lot of staff haven't had any downtime, but they are amazing, keeping going day in, day out. I couldn't be prouder. Part 4. Emma Barnes, ward sister on Ward 31. Every single shift is battling for beds. My role is constantly about looking who I can step down and move off the ward. When you run at something and think you are going to win it, you don't. And you don't. You have nothing left, really. But we know this is our life until we get a vaccine. This is us. There's a lot of stress. A lot of people off with episodes of work-related stress. The counseling we were getting ended in August. But in the last 2 weeks, it started again because I had staff just crying. Staff texting me to say they're crying in the car on the way home. It's the relentlessness of it. I've cried. You just cry as the day is over. We are seeing much younger patients this time round. Last time, the vast majority were older patients. This time, most are in their 40s, and we got a lot more going on ventilators. They seem younger and sicker, but mortality is lower. We've learned a lot, and a lot of people are surviving because of what we've learned. However, though treatments are better, what good are they if the health systems collapse and the sick can't get that treatment? Steve report number 102, SARS-2 Doctor's Diary. We are first-hand witnesses of this devastation, part 5 of 5. Kaylee Bell, registered nurse associate. In May, I had a headache. I was tired, and I thought it was the stress. It wouldn't go away, and on the third day, I was sat at the nurse's station, and I thought I was going to pass out. I was tested for COVID twice. It was negative. It wasn't until June when I went to accident and emergency that COVID showed on the x-ray. See, that's frightening that you can test and it won't show up as positive, and you're just spreading it the whole time. I had muscle spasms, fatigue, and I couldn't take a breath or move. The only place I had been was work and shopping, so I think I got it at work. We were just surrounded by COVID patients and battling through it. We start work at 7:30 with one set of PPE. Then an email would come through that it wasn't the right sort of PPE. I would really like to know more about that, but she doesn't elaborate on that. It was changing all the time, and supplies were running low. I feel like in June and July, I slept. I was mostly woken up by my husband to go to the toilet. In August, I felt a bit better, but couldn't climb the stairs. It was unreal. There were so many things happening, I couldn't describe it all. But by September, I was staying awake more, could go up and down the stairs a bit easier, though my appetite hadn't really come back. I thought I was feeling better, but it is kind of stalled there. Ladies and gentlemen, friends and enemies, this pandemic is beginning to show us its real first wave. During this winter, where it's just lashing us at full force. I have never seen so much news in one day. So just brace yourselves. I know we had a giant like internet. I think it was YouTube was down, and there's so much happening. It's ridiculous. But just brace yourselves. Remember to subscribe, like, share it, show a friend, ask questions. Tell me, what you want to say in the comments, and I will see you in the next video.